We just thank you. We praise you in Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen.
Thanks, Hunter. I love when Hunter gets it going. I can't wait to see Strength to Stand this week as our ushers are passing that. Just a couple of really quick announcements. I want to piggyback on what Hunter said. We have group lunch and fuel lunch is January 17th. There are booklets laying all around. They're blue. They're mostly correct. We had a couple of groups jump in last minute after print, so we're gonna put all that out online. If you're not part of our church-wide email, you can also go on the website. But we're gonna put all those groups out online. There are some amazing groups. We got several women's groups. We got the Chosen Season 2. We got a 101 back to the basics. We're gonna learn how to walk out our faith. We got a marriage group about intimacy. We got a lot of great groups. I'm really excited about this semester. After the service, we're starting a new series called Live Loud. This is every year we do a vision series at the beginning of the month, and we've got some bracelets for you. Some of you still have your No Excuses one on. Over here, Matt and Wayne and a couple other people will be standing over there. Stop by, grab bracelet. It's free. It's on us. We'd love to meet you, say hey, and give you a bracelet. And we're going to get started. 2024. I got all kind of cliches, right? New year, new you. Don't you like that? How the preachers in America right now. New year, new you. Is it? You ever wonder why New Year's resolutions don't work? I mean, let's be real. 91%, and I know it's correct because I Googled it. 91% of New Year's resolutions fail. 23% of them by week 1. That's because of Krispy Kreme. 43%. I blew mine this morning. I told my buddy, he'd been talking to me. I'm like, I told my wife, I even moved the coat rack, a.k.a. treadmill, from the garage inside. And then I ate Jack's this morning. I didn't make it a week. I'm in that category. 43% by the end of January fail their New Year's resolution. Why do you think that is? I'm here today to actually tell you why. I know the answer to that. It is also why churches in America are failing. And I know that's an aggressive statement, right? But you've seen all the stats, every stat out there. Church in America is dead, post-Christian nation, it's all going to the tank. But I can tell you why, and it's the same exact reasons that New Year's resolutions fail. Because we are so worried about the external instead of changing the internal. And here's what I know. Until you have an internal heart change, the external change will only be temporary. The external change will only be temporary until your heart gets to a place where it truly wants to change. Change will only be temporary. And I've heard all of the arguments about the church, about on Facebook, why the church in America is shrinking. And I believe, to be honest with you, all those arguments are redundantly and religiously ridiculous. Right? Whether you sing "It Might Get Loud" or whether you sing "How Great Thou Art," doesn't matter. Whether you got ripped jeans on or whether you got elbow patches on your tweed suit, does not matter. All of that is external. All of it is external. Those are all style things. They're all style things. The arguments are religious arguments, right? I once heard it put this way. A buddy of mine said it this way. He goes, Christians arguing is like a bunch of people in lifeboats arguing about the boat while everybody around them's drowning. And think about that. Think about this for a second. 70% of our county doesn't even go to church. We in Alabama, the conservative Bible Belt. Your neighbors, people you work with, people at your ball field, they're drowning. They're drowning. And we're arguing about style, right? There's people all over that you know, that you spend day in, day out with. If they died today, they'd burn in hell for eternity. Happy New Year. Think about that for a second. Why is Why is the church sinking in America? Because the church needs a heart change. 2023, we shifted directions. Our church shifted direction in 2023. I've had several pastors reach out to me towards the end of last year, and they're like, how are you doing it? I'm like, what do you mean? I mean, we have record growth, record small groups, record serve teams. Youth has doubled, 5, 6, tripled, kids doubled. I mean, all this has been a great year. They were like, how do you do it? And I said, it's simple. Church is simple. We keep it simple. Love God, love people. Serve God, serve others. They're like, well, no. What's the strategy? I said, oh, that's what you're asking. My bad. Love God, love people, serve God, serve others. Filter every single thing we do through Jesus. No excuses, simply Jesus, right? Because when you focus on Jesus, when you filter everything that you do through Jesus, not politics of religion, not culture, not the president, when you focus everything you do as a church through Jesus, when you do it like Jesus, it simplifies everything. And as a church, everything we do should funnel straight through Jesus. And we should do it the way Jesus did it. And what does that look like? Well, Jesus was asked, what's the most important commandment? It's a bunch of religious people. They were trying to trip him up. They were expecting him to choose one of the big 10. Jesus looked at him and said, love the Lord your God with all. Say all. That was weak. Say all. Love the Lord your God with all. All your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your body, all your strength, everything you got. Love God with everything you got. Oh, and by the way, love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love God, love people, serve God, serve other. And that's the tension, right? That's the tension of religion and Pharisee thinking. That's the tension of our culture, right? Because we live in a culture that wants to gossip and tear down and slander and argue and hate. Right? If you're not in the same political party, if you're not the same skin color, you don't root for the same ball team. Hate. And trash, right? You won't know why church is declining because it sounds the same as out there. But it all centers around pride too, because culture has bled into the church. Because when you look at pride, I'm better than my neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, I can't do that because I'm better than they are. We don't say it, right? I'm better than my neighbor. I deserve that seat more than my neighbor. I deserve that position. I deserve that title. They don't deserve that. I'm more holy than my neighbor. I'm more righteous than my neighbor. Yeah, I'm mocking. And here's why, because the Bible says nobody's righteous, no, not one. But that's what we think. We don't say it, right? You can't say that in church. That's what we think. So what we said is we're going to focus through Jesus, love God, love people. And then we talked a lot about a table, right? Because Jesus tells us who we're supposed to reach. He tells us to go into alleyways and the byways and reach the people that others look past and look beyond, right? Far too often, though, what ends up happening is the church is built on the guy on the stage. And that's ridiculous, right? Or the committee, or the board, right? We got to build the church around that. There's people who really actually believe that the church can't live and thrive without them. There's people who actually believe that worship can begin when they show up. God, I have graced you with my presence now. Y'all can worship now because I have arrived, right? And see, that's the problem. Church wasn't built on a man. If you grew up Catholic or Methodist or Lutheran or something in that genre, you've been taught something a little bit wrong. And we have this belief the church is built on a man and we worship men, right? We worship presidents. See, y'all actually think whichever one gets elected is going to save us. You're not. There's only one who saves. But we actually oftentimes believe that the church was built on a man. Peter, the Apostle Peter, right? Because we've heard that story. And upon this rock, I'll build my church. And so the church was built on Peter, right? Wrong. Slow it down a little. Upon this rock, this is Jesus talking after he restored him, because Peter was a fallen, dirty, sinful dude. And that's who, by the way, God built his church on. But Jesus says this. He says, Peter, upon this rock, I, Jesus, will build my church. See, there's a total difference there. Church isn't built on a man. Church is built on Jesus. So how do we get so far off? How come the church doesn't look more like Jesus? How come the church doesn't sound like Jesus? How come the church doesn't act like Jesus? How come the church doesn't reflect the heart and the personality of Jesus? Because it would be the reflection of God, because Jesus says, when you've seen the Father, you've seen me. So I'm just asking, shouldn't the church look and sound like Jesus? Shouldn't everything we do funnel and focus through Jesus? Church is simple, simply Jesus, right? And I've asked our leadership. I love our leadership board. We have board of elders. I asked them some questions last week. We do it at the beginning of every year. I said, hey, who's the church supposed to reach? Like, let's get that right, right? And then I asked them, I said, define success for the church. And then how is the church supposed to impact our community? Because if we're just a good old boy country club, we're not going to do much for our community. So how does the church minister to the community that we're a part of? And I love their answers. I'm not going to get into them today. I want to keep it kind of private in those answers. But every single answer that they gave was straight biblical. And that's what we're going to talk about over the next 4 weeks, right? For some people, if you grew up really old school, you'd call it sanctification. And that's just a really big churchy word to make me sound smart. Another word, if you're a little more non-denomination, you would have heard it called assimilation, right? Because we're cool and hip. Or would you call that? I had to ask my wife what that means. What would you call that music? You said what? Go get hyped. I needed my interpreter, right? But if you look at it today, we call it the process. And here's what I know about the process. If you follow the biblical process, not culture, not style, if you follow the biblical process, your life can't help but get better, guaranteed. And I don't guarantee a lot of things. I don't. If you follow the process that God set out for us, and it's really simple. The first, here, I'll run through it real quick. The first part is attend. Congratulations to everybody here. You've passed step 1. To all you watching online, sinner. I'm kidding. I love our online. It's attend. There is something about getting together with other people and praising the name of Jesus. And can I ask a question? How come we show up to Bryant Denny with a 0.1 on the Richter scale, but they tell us, hey, you should worship quieter? Shh, keep it down. We got to act like it's a funeral. He's not dead. But you got to attend. And that's why we do Egg the Cities and Beans and Bugs and tea parties and craft fairs and coffee houses, is because we want to invite people to his house. Not many people are just wandering into church anymore for various reasons. But the biggest part of life change is put yourself in the body. Put yourself with other believers. Sunday's all about celebration, inspiration, celebrating the Lord who walked out of that tomb. Inspiration to go live a life of Jesus. And so people who don't know Jesus can find him and accept him, and eternity can change. That's what Sundays are about. Which leads to the second step, believe. We call it know Christ. If you don't know Christ, none of the rest of it matters. It's all just dog and pony show, right? Because you can do all the good stuff and it can work for a minute, but if you spend eternity in hell, what's it all for? So we say know Christ. We go after the lost with everything we got. And then we say make a circle. Now this is where a lot of people fall off. Like, hey, I get people, they'll attend, and I get people, they believe, but then you say make a circle. That's what we call small groups. And this is where you grow. And this is where you get intimate with other people. And this is where it gets challenging, because you've got to actually open yourself up. And I get it. You've been hurt and you've been burned. And it didn't work. And it didn't do this. And this happened and that happened. But at the end of the day, what we call it is you make a circle. You put people around you. That's your tribe. It's your circle. It's the ones that will pick up a mat and rip the roof off for you. It's the ones that when your kids are going through a valley. It's the ones that when your marriage is falling apart. It's the ones when that chain grabs you and pulls you back in. It's those people. They don't bail. We call it make a circle. And can I tell you something? Because it's coming. You're going to jump into a small group, and we got them Sunday and Wednesday and Monday and Friday and basketball and Bible studies and book studies. Can I tell you something? You're going to walk into one. You know what you're going to find? There's a bunch of weird people here. And if you can't find any weird ones in your group, you're probably the one. And that's okay. And can I tell you something? I don't care how pretty they dress, they're just as jacked up as you. But that's why we get in a circle. You grow life in circles, not rows. You don't need a lesson. You need a life change. Then we say, find your purpose. This is where you step into serving, right? There's some of you sitting in here right now, and you got a talent beyond measure. There's some of you play a guitar, some of you can fix an engine, some of you can build a wall, some of you can cook food, some of you can actually smile and greet people and look like you're happy to see them. But you're not. And so we say step into your purpose, created on purpose for a purpose. God gave you a talent, right? Use it. And here's another reason we do that, because we're going to put you around a team that is amazing, and most of our teams here within the church are like small groups, because you wind up doing life with your team. And it's usually people that are like-minded. And then we say give back, because there comes a point when you realize what God has given you, and you need to give it back to people. That's the next step. And then the final one is lead. Here's the deal. I want every single person sitting in this room today to one day lead something in this church. Raising up leaders. Lead youth, lead a Bible study, lead a group, lead a team, lead kids, lead your family. Right? We believe in raising up. But here's what you need to know about the process. And this is where I don't want to fill you with a bunch of gold dust falling from the sky stuff, right? Process will change your life, guaranteed. If you do every one of those things, your life can't help but get better. Your marriage will get better. Your parenting will get better. Your relationships will get better. Your career will get better. Your hope will get better. And your peace will get better. Guaranteed. If you do the biblical process. But there's something you need to know about it. Every single step is going to require something. It's called sacrifice. Every single step will require sacrifice. You see, to reach more people for Jesus, which is what Jesus calls his church to do. By the way, if you're a Christ follower, you are the church. This is the building we meet in. You are the church. But to reach more people for Jesus, which his church is called to do, you got to build a bigger table. And that's going to require sacrifice. I got to make more room in small groups. We're knocking out walls left and right. We got a facility team. Every time they fix one wall, I'm like, hey, can you knock another one down? We need more room. But you don't understand, Pastor. All four of us have been meeting for 42 years. Bring in a fifth for the love. For the love. Bring somebody else into your group. You know why people don't go to groups? Because they don't get invited. Go invite somebody. You need a bigger group. We need more rooms on our team. Well, you don't understand. We work so well together. We'll train somebody new. It's going to require sacrifice. That chair you sit in every single Sunday, may come a Sunday where you got to get up and let somebody else sit there. Build a bigger table. The table you bought, you may have to share it. It's going to be more kids running, and sometimes that looks chaotic. It's going to be more youth excitement, right? It's going to be louder music, but here's what you also need to know. It's going to be more mess. It's going to be messy. And messy's okay. Build a bigger table. This is what God says, who we should reach and how we should reach. And building a bigger table will require this. This is Jesus' words. He explains what following him looks like. The preacher's not explaining it. Peter's not explaining it. Paul's not explaining it. Jesus says, this is what following me looks like. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom that was prepared for you before the creation of the world. For I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger and you invited me into your home. I was naked, you gave me clothing. I was sick, you cared for me. I was in prison and you visited me. There's not a single thing in there that looks like what church looks like today by our metrics. When you look at what the church is supposed, this is how you follow me. By the way, this is our verse for the year. This is how you follow Jesus. When you see somebody hungry, you feed them. When you see somebody thirsty, you give them something to drink. When they're cold, you give them some clothes. When that prison of bondage is pulled them back in, you go to them. You don't talk trash about them. You go to them. And you visit them. All from the mouth of Jesus. He shows us how to follow him. And I understand it. It's counterculture. Because that's not what culture looks like. Culture says, take care of me first, right? It's all about me. Love me. Look at me. Follow me. Worship me. Snap me. Still don't even really know what that means. But we see this all in culture and all on social media, but we see it at church. And we see it everywhere, right? And let's be real, the world is noisy. And man, I'm going to tell you something. This year is going to be noisy. This may be the noisiest year in my generation. But there's somebody that's got to get louder. And I'm not saying talk louder. I'm not saying be louder. I'm saying live louder. In a world of hate and chaos, the love of Christ will draw people to the Father. Which is why in 2024, the church has got to live loud. Our role as the church, our role as Christ followers. And hey, if you're not, that's cool. Love that you're here. Come on back and see us. But as Christ followers, we are called to live loud. But it will. It will. Make no mistake. It'll come with a sacrifice. Fully and all come with a sacrifice. You can't be fully devoted to following Christ without a sacrifice. What does fully look like? It looks like giving God your best and your first. Seek first the kingdom of God. Everything else I'll give you. Seek first in your day. Pray to me first. Study with me first. Serve me first. That requires a sacrifice. Love the Lord your God with all. That means all. That don't mean when your butt hurt, you don't have to stop loving. It doesn't mean when somebody hurts you, you hurt them back. It says love them with all you got. And then love your neighbor as yourself. And there's no parameters around it. And that requires sacrifice. What is that kind of sacrifice? What does biblical sacrifice look like? Let's look at a story. It's Genesis 22. Sometimes later, God tested Abraham. He said, Abraham, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. Now, let me just stop there for a second. How many of y'all, let's be real. Moving on. Early the next morning, Abraham got up, loaded up his donkey, took with him a couple of servants and his son Isaac. When he cut enough wood for the offering, he set out to the place God had told him about. On the third day, Abraham looked up, saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you. Abraham took the wood, placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the two of them went up together, Isaac spoke up and said to his dad, he said, Father, the fire and the wood are here, but where's the lamb for the burnt offering? Son's starting to figure something out. Right? They've done this before. He knows what's going on. Where's the lamb? Abraham answered him. He said, God will provide the lamb for the burnt offering. And the two of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and he laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and he took his knife to slay his son. Abraham, Abraham, the Lord called out to him. Here I am, he replied. He said, do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. Now that I know that you fear God because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. Abraham looked up in a thicket and he saw a ram. He went over and took the ram and he sacrificed it instead of his son. So Abraham called the place, the Lord will provide. I'm going to say something very non-pastoral here. Is that all right? Can we be real? There's a lot of things in the Bible that don't make sense to me practically. You can sit there and polish your halo and look at me and tell me how everything makes sense to you, but I challenge you to go down here to Lake Tuscaloosa, step off the pier, and walk on water. I mean, it don't make sense. Walking on water don't make sense practically, right? Taking your son or your daughter or any of your children and taking them to an altar to sacrifice to God, your only child, right? And here's the thing, God didn't let him get close to the altar and say, hey, no, never mind. He grabbed the knife, like he let him get to the final moment. That doesn't make sense to me. If I'm being real, miracles don't make practical sense to me, right? When God moves in a big way, it doesn't make sense. How does a guy live in the belly of a well for 3 days? Walking around a fortified wall 7 times makes it crumble. Sun stands still for 24 hours. A star does zigzags across the sky to lead the wise men. Dude named Lazarus gets up and walks out of a grave. Right? It doesn't make sense. And I sit there and I think about Abraham. What was he thinking on his way up there? He's thinking, I'm about to lose my son. I mean, that's not a high moment. It's easy to have faith on a mountaintop. Some of y'all walking in 2024, you're like, man, it's a great year. I got all the faith. Let's live loud. Faith looks a lot different in the valley. You hear me say live loud, you're like, what do I got to shout about? What do I got to shout about? Preaching. My kid's off the res. My marriage is falling apart. My job's falling apart. Medical. What have I got to be loud about? See, faith looks different in the valley than it does on the mountain. And I got to think as Abraham's walking up here, he's thinking, man, I'm about to lose my only son. I mean, what kind of faith is that, right? It's called real faith. It's giving God your first and your best and your all. That's what kind of faith that looks like. Love God and fully devoted. All and fully requires sacrifice. And here's what I realized about this story and about real faith and about audacious faith is it will always appear to take it too far. The world will tell you that you're taking it too far. True faith, true devotion, fully following Jesus will look like you're going too far. When you begin to live loud for Jesus, when you begin to walk in His calling, when you fully devote yourself to Him, you will be branded. You will be labeled by culture, and you'll probably be labeled by religion as too extreme, right? Living loud and standing on God's word will be called extremist. You'll be too extreme. Live loud. I've been told to tone it down. It's okay to do that in the church, but man, don't rock the boat. I'm going to tell you something, 2024, God help the elders. I will not be muzzled by culture or religion anymore. We can't afford it. Our next generation can't afford for the church to be quiet anymore. You'll be labeled. I've been labeled too liberal by the religious crowd and too extreme by the liberal crowd. Right? Students, most of you are sitting over here. You stand for biblical purity, you're going to be labeled. You're something. When you stand for every life has value, no exceptions, you'll be labeled to something, right? Every church I've been in some capacity, somebody's walked up to me and said, hey, there's too many sinners. There's too many broken. We have too many messes. Have you ever read the Gospels? You ever looked at the ministry of Jesus? Hey, students, at some point when you live loud, you're going to be told to sit down because you're too young. Hey, older generation, you'll be told, hey, it's beyond you. You're too old. Some of you sitting here, you think you don't have what it takes because you've been told you're too broken. Your past is too bad. You're too broke. You're too dirty. And here's my challenge for 2024. Stop letting them label you with two. Don't let anybody put their two on you. Live loud. You're too restored. You're too forgiven. But don't let culture put two on you. But when you live loud, culture will label you. Gene, come on up and let's get out of here. But here's what you need to know. It will require a sacrifice. It'll require a sacrifice, and it will require a big one. And I wanted to look at what does that practically look like, because Abraham and Isaac's a story that you just look at and you're going, that's not even realistic. And by the way, it's really old. You said we're going to focus everything through Jesus. All right, let's look at what Jesus thinks about sacrifice. All right? It's found in Luke 21. As Jesus looked up, he saw the rich people putting their gifts into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. Back then they called them mites. Today we call them pennies. Jesus says, truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all of the others. All these other people gave out of their own wealth, but she gave out of her poverty. She put in all she had. All. All and fully. You see, there was a group that would walk in and they wanted everybody to see them. Look at me. This is what I'm giving. Well, you had it to give. But this little old lady, Jesus pointed at her. He said, hey, check that one out. She just gave everything. She gave everything she had. She gave everything that she had to live on. She gave all. She gave fully. You know, I have a quirky thing about food. Some of you are like, where's that go? I have a quirky thing about food. Here's what you need to know about me. I don't tell my kids no with food. I won't tell your kids no with food. I won't. I don't care. They walk up and they ask me if, hey, can I have something to eat? Sure. Right? We have people stop by all during the week. Hey, can I have something to eat? Absolutely. Let's run down here to McDonald's or over to Jack's, or you want to go to Walmart and grab some groceries? We got a guy who donates Little Debbie cakes because he owns a Debbie cake company route. And he brings us Debbie cakes. And if you walk into the office on any given day, you're going to see a pile of Debbie cakes. I hand them jokers out left and right. People come in, they're hungry. Hey, I'm hungry. Here, have some food. Hey, can I take this? Absolutely. I'm going to Strength to Stand with the youth. You know what I'm going to do? I'm letting you know, parents, your kid going to come back fat. And I know I got some purists out there. You're like, well, that's fine, preacher, but you shouldn't give them Little Debbie cakes. You ought to give them an apple. Organic. Y'all like peel your sweet potatoes and they crunch. You don't even cook them. Sweet potatoes ain't supposed to crunch. You put marshmallows on them. Organic. Shut up. But here's why. Here's why I won't tell your kids no. And here's why I don't differentiate between Debbie cakes and apples. Because when I was homeless in Denver, Colorado, I'm going to tell you something. When you're digging in a dumpster for food, packaged food tastes better than your apple at the bottom of a dumpster. And so I'll give it to them. Every time I see this brand of bread, Sunbeam, it brings me back to those days. Because I used to walk around. You know, I see homeless people all the time. They're walking around looking down. You know why they're looking down? They're looking for change. I remember when I would scrounge for change just so I could buy a loaf of bread. Back then, it was like 50 cents. Right? And then I would go into McDonald's and I would steal. Your preacher stole. I did, straight up. I'd walk in there, I'd steal ketchup packets. I'd steal jelly. Jelly was premium. Because I was hungry. Some of y'all like, don't eat Little Debbie cake. You ain't never been hungry. Your stomach growling, that ain't hungry. That's uncomfortable. Pain is hungry. Some of y'all like, that's past the expiration date. You ain't been hungry. But see, when I lived on the streets, here's the crazy thing. God kept bringing people into my life that were willing to sacrifice. And it didn't make any sense to me. There was this restaurant. I used to go to the air dumpster because it had the better stuff. And if you could get there at the right time, you could get it before it sank towards the bottom. And I got caught. And they didn't kick me out. As a matter of fact, one of their employees, and I'm going to meet them in heaven one day, I bet you. One of their employees would put the leftover food in a box. And that don't seem like a lot to most of you. But when it's in a box, you're not in a dumpster. She could have got fired, but she sacrificed. I had people all the time walk by me. It was cold in Denver. And they'd walk by me and they'd bring me coffee, or they'd bring me a burger, or they'd bring me some food. They stopped. They sacrificed. Doesn't seem like much, but they sacrificed. I had one dude, and it was cold. Talk about hungry, there's cold. And I was cold. And he pulled his car over, got out of his car, and handed me his coat that he had on his back. That didn't make any sense to me. It's a nice coat. And understand, I was there by my choices. I ain't blaming on nobody. I was there by my choices. But all throughout, God brought somebody who was willing to sacrifice. And he gave me parents who were willing to sacrifice and buy me a bus ticket to get back to a safe place. And he gave me a church. I'd walk way away from a church. He gave me a church that was willing to sacrifice. Because I didn't look like them. I didn't sound like them. Man, I cussed a lot. And I wore, about the same thing. I didn't look like them. I didn't talk like them. I didn't like church people. As a matter of fact, if I'm being honest with you today, I probably still feel more comfortable around street people than church people. But God kept putting people in my way that would sacrifice. And I got to asking myself, why? It doesn't make sense. Well, it doesn't make sense until you understand what God sacrificed for you. Abraham and Isaac is just a precursor to what God did. God asked Abraham, God will never ask you to do something he's not willing to do. He asked Abraham, I want you to give me your first son, the one that you love, your only son. And then God turned around and did it too. You understand sacrifice when you understand the heart of a father who would sacrifice his son for people like us. It didn't make sense to me. And I was trying to figure out, I'm like, man, I got to make this make sense, because to live a life like we need to live loud, it's got to make sense. And so I thought, okay, let me do this. Hunter, come here. They know you. Don't do anything dumb. All right. Slide back some. I got some in the plug last service. There you go. All right, that's about right. That's about right. All right, here we go. Let's see if I can get this right. Got this, and I got this. I almost looked like I was prepared for this. I got some pennies. First service is about 2,500. I think I lost about 100 of them under the stage. All right. Pennies, they're worthless, but we're going to do an example. Okay, this is what I want you to do. This is what sacrifice looks like. All right, I'm going to pour these pennies in your hand, right? You're a pretty smart guy. Brookwood and all. Kid. All right, so I'm going to pour in your hand. It's really easy. It's kind of dumb. I'm going to pour it in your hand. I want you to put it in the bucket. All right? I need you to do something for me. I want you to hold your hands like this. Spread them out a little bit. All right. Grip tight. Okay, good deal. Now, I'm going to pour these pennies in your hand, and I want you to put them in the bucket. Okay? Yep. You suck. All right. We're going to try something else. That didn't work. That was bad. Cole's going to hate me again. All right, we're going to try it this way. I'm going to need another volunteer. Now, come on up, dude. What's up, man? What's your name? Zach Scott. Nice to meet you. First time? Already on stage. Good job. All right, this time, what we're going to do, I'm going to pour the rest of the pennies. Now, I need you to hold your hands out again. Yeah, just like that. Now, I'm going to pour them in your hands. I want you to get as many in the bucket as you can, all right? All right, here we go. Most of the pennies, 2,500 of them, most of them in the bucket. Well, what do you think I'll do with this? Because it's 25 pennies, it's not really worth anything. Like, actually, I had a hard time at the bank even finding pennies because it's pretty worthless. But it's 2,500 pennies. What do you think I'll do with it? You know this cat? You do, don't you? What's his name? Zach. You know this guy? You need better friends, bro. This is Zach. We know Zach. Hunter brought Zach with him this morning. They went to church together a while back. Some of y'all are like, yeah, I got you. But here's why I did it. That lady dropped 2 of these. She gave all she had. And with that, Jesus was able to do something amazing. So you take 2,500 pennies, which is $25. I mean, let's be real, that's what? A couple of Happy Meals, a couple cans of Copenhagen, a couple fishing baits, a couple of 6-packs, Mountain Dew, Church of Sinners. It's just a couple of things during the week. $25 over the course of a month. If we took 2,500 pennies like that little lady did and we handed it to Zach. When you're hungry, you fed me. When you were thirsty, you gave me some coffee. When I was cold, you gave me a coat. When I was struggling, you visited me. And when I was outside, you invited me in. Jesus says, this is how you follow me. You build a bigger table. He said, this is what following me looks like. I'm wondering today, maybe this message wasn't for y'all, it was all for me, because I asked myself this question this week. I said, how many times have I walked by Jesus this week and ignored him? How many times have I walked past Jesus with a sign that said anything helps, and I looked down and I looked away because I didn't want to engage? Because I was too busy. I didn't have time. I didn't want to. I mean, really? He should go get a job, right? How many times have I ignored Jesus? And I'm the church. How many times have I looked at somebody when they walked in and said, you don't belong, and I'm the church? How many times have you? If we're going to live loud in 2024, if we're going to live loud in 2024, we got to get it right. We got to do it the way Jesus did it. We got to Feed the people Jesus told us to feed. We got to give them water. We got to give them the coat off our back. We got to open our doors. We got to go visit. When their marriage is falling apart, you don't abandon them. You go put yourself in the middle of it. When that chain, that prison pulls them back in, you don't abandon them. You help them one more time. We don't understand, preacher, I've helped them. Help them again. Help them again. When they're hungry, we got an impact team. Go flip some burgers. Hand it to them. Give them a quarter for the laundromat. Foster kids, pay their way to camp. When they're hungry, feed them. When they're thirsty, give them something to drink. When they're cold, give them the shirt off your back. Give it to them fully and all. You want to have a miraculous 2024? Fully and all. Give him everything you got. Give him your first and give him your best. For some of you, hey, maybe it is $25 a month. And if you're quirky about giving it to the church and you don't trust the church, go find Zach. They're all over. They're at Publix, they're at Walmart. They're in our parking lot in the lower end. For some of you, you give, you tithe, you do it right, you're obedient. Give an offering, 25 more. But for most of us, it's not even a money thing. For some of you, it's saying, I'm going to give my time. I'm going to kill myself on these buckets. I'm going to give my time to Zach. I'm going to pray for him. Some of you I watched. I've been getting reports all morning. They're out there praying with him. Good. One lady first service gave him hand warmers, some big old ski gloves. He's been offered rides. Great job, church. But there's some of us that walked right by. And he's on our doorstep. He's on our doorstep. To live loud, we got to get it right. We got to do it the way Jesus did it. Father, this morning, somebody in here this morning that doesn't know you, God, please, Holy Spirit, draw them to you. There's somebody in here this morning, they're like Zach. They're broken, they're busted. They don't know where to turn. God, draw them to you, not to a dude on a stage. God, draw them to you. Father, convict us. I pray in 2024 you convict us to our face. Put us at the altar, crying out to you. How many times, God, forgive me. God, forgive me. How many times did I walk by you? Because it was inconvenient. Because I didn't have time. Because I looked down. Because I judged. Father, I pray you ignite a revival and a fire in our church. Father, I pray you convict us. Father, I pray you bring us to our knees. I pray, Father, this morning, if there's anybody in here who's going through a storm, marriage, kids, medical, I don't care what it is, Father, draw them close to you. Wrap your big old daddy arms around them and let them know that this is the place for them. Regardless, they're not to anything. And Father, if they'll bring it to the altar, we'll love them like you showed us to love them. Father, I pray for a 2024. I pray for